We'll get into that shortly. But speaking on the campaign trail, former president and NDC flag bearer John Mahama directed all NDC MPs not to attend to Parliament if it is recalled before the election. Listen.
Now say almost say majority.
They said they will not agree that we are the majority. Just let us finish voting. When you see the parliamentary results, you will know we are the majority. Now they want Parliament to be recalled for deliberations. Just 12 days to the elections. You say we should stop campaigning and come to Parliament. If they like, we should go. But the NDC will not go to Parliament. After we finish voting and we see their smoothness level, then we will open Parliament for all of us to go.
Smoothness level. Parliament.
So you had the former president John Dramani Mahama there. Let's go on to the phone lines now, bringing Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante, who's joining us on phone. Kweku, so on what grounds did the Speaker reject the request to recall the House?
So it's a really tense two-page memo that the Speaker of Parliament has written to Alexander Afenyo-Markin. Maybe just a bit of notice. In fact, if you look at the memo also, the one that went from Alexander Afenyo-Markin to the Speaker of Parliament, he described himself both as the majority and the leader of government business. In this memo, the Speaker chooses to go only with the leader of government business. He didn't refer or doesn't refer to Alexander Afenyo-Markin in any part of this memo as the majority leader. But to the substance, it says that your memo calls on me to exercise my discretion pursuant to Orders 57.3 and 58.4 of the standing orders of the House to summon the House to sit for 2 days and to consider 22 urgent items, all of which you refer to as either outstanding public business or urgent government business. Honorable Leader, as you may be aware, the performance or the function of Parliament and the duties of MPs extend beyond plenary sittings of Parliament. Again, as you are aware, the parliamentary calendar acknowledges elections campaign periods. This season is for the government, parties, and both presidential and parliamentary candidates to present their manifestos to the people and to account and justify how the mandate given them by the voters for the 4-year term of office has been applied to the benefit of the people. It continues that, bearing in mind the provisions of Article 296A and B of the Constitution and the closeness of your proposed date to the general election, I am of the considered opinion that it would not be in the national interest to interrupt the campaigns of members of Parliament by a recall to a plenary sitting of Parliament. Consequently, it will not be fair to exercise my discretion in favor of your request to summon MPs at this time for a 2-day sitting to consider 22 items that you say are urgent or outstanding government business. Again, Brace, I should note that in that article that was published by the Speaker's lawyers yesterday, mention was made of Article 296 that having to do with the use of discretion and whether or not it is arbitrary or capricious or made in such a way that in that kind of sense, the Speaker of Parliament again refers to some of these provisions in this letter.
But the Speaker gives an assurance that the House will be recalled promptly after the election.
Well, yes, exactly. The Speaker starts on that firm note and says that he is not going to recall Parliament because that will mean disrupting the campaign of several members of Parliament. And he also says this is a time where people have to go to the electorate and account to them. But he says right after the election, he's open to recalling Parliament. In fact, on his own volition. Let me read it. He says, it is worth noting that having regard to the practice and deliberations of the House, I wonder how the proposed 22 items could be transacted within 2 days. I accordingly suggest that government prioritizes this business together with others not captured by a memo for consideration after the conduct of the general elections on the 7th of December. The House will resume sitting after the elections to complete all essential matters before a seamless transition to the 9th Parliament of the 4th Republic. And this line is interesting. The Speaker says the national interest will be better served if members exhibit conduct of honor, empathy, and humility in the performance of their duties. In these circumstances, I am neither inclined nor disposed to exercise my discretion in favor of your request. The request is accordingly declined.
And the last paragraph before the concluding paragraph is quite one that is a food for thought anyway. I'm grateful to you, Kwekwa Asante, for joining us here. There's a stop story here on Joy. And Top Story, as always, is brought to you by Telecel, Connecting Energies and Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Let's bring in the First Deputy Majority Whip, Habib Idrisu. He will be joining us, but we have on the line now Roxanne Nelson Dafemapo, his MP for South Dai. I'm grateful to you for joining us, Roxanne. So, I mean, the Speaker says a big no.
Thank you very much. I'm privileged to have joined you.
The Speaker says a big no to the MPP caucus of the House that he won't recall. Your reaction?
It's in order, given the exigencies of the times. I believe that Speaker's exercise of discretion has been well grounded in this matter in declining the request. But let me say, by way of making a legal point, can we say, for instance, that Speaker's response to the memo for a recall by the leader of government business amounted to interpretation of Article 296 in this case?
He was called upon to recall the House, and he's giving his verdict.
Yes, and that called for exercising a function of office pursuant to a constitutional provision, isn't it? I want to urge the leader of government business to go back to the Supreme Court to determine whether or not, in exercising his discretion in this matter to decline the request, was proper. You see, so this is the kind of absurd consequences you can get yourself into when you pursue certain matters. Because every day, constitutional office holders are called upon to perform certain constitutional functions pursuant to a certain constitutional provision. So you cannot be running to court anytime such a function is performed. What Speaker has done could not have amounted to interpreting a constitutional provision. But anyway, that's where we are.
But I mean, declaring a seat vacant is quite different from deciding to
it is
not to recall the House.
You see, it is not Speaker who has declared the seat vacant. The Constitution says when certain events occur, you must vacate your seat. So it is not Speaker that is declaring the seat vacant. It is because those events have occurred, so he must make those pronouncements. It's a pronouncement that A has happened, so B must occur.
But we all realized how those of you who know the law were divided in terms of the real meaning of that provision. So it was important.
Somebody decided to create a division.
Oh, but we listened to several of you lawyers.
Yes, I agree. I agree. But somebody decided to create a division on that matter. But in any case, we are saying that the request for a recall has been justifiably declined by Speaker. And this Speaker made
Roxanne, do I still have you?
The House operate. How do you expect to conduct 22 prioritized business of government in 2 days?
But couldn't you members have agreed to probably tackle part of it if the Speaker had decided to recall the House?
So why don't you list one business or two business, or at least why don't you prioritize what you think can be effectively performed by the House or considered by the House? Why do you have to list 22 businesses? Why? And if you check, these same businesses of government featured featured in the memo to Speaker on the 31st of July. That memo for a recall. This trade businesses featured. We came. They couldn't pursue it. Again, when they recall the house, the last one before this, those same businesses featured. They came to Parliament and walked out on their own business. So to a lot of us and to a lot of Ghanaians, these businesses are no priorities at all. Mm. How does the grant of a tax waiver a prioritized matter? How?
Stay with me. Let me bring in Dr. Rashid Rahman. He is Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Now, you were yesterday when we were speaking, you in conclusion, you spoke about how MPs must watch how they involve the courts in the running of Parliament, and you sort of draw the conclusion that it could possibly be a contributory factor to where we are. To what extent has the courts influence the Speaker's conclusion based on where you arrived at yesterday?
Well, I believe, I don't know, maybe this is a question that the Speaker myself would have to answer, but I think, very strongly that, the interference of the court in the business of Parliament has weighed heavily in this decision that the Speaker came to. Because I've heard many members of Parliament, particularly from the NDC group, say that the court can decide whatever they want to decide, but they don't run. The court doesn't run Parliament, and we are seeing in this particular instance, particularly because the Right Honourable Speaker was asked to use his discretion. I believe he will say, okay, let me use the powers that I also have, and if you want, go and ask the court to force Parliament to come and sit. That is where we are. And as I indicated yesterday, the letter from Honorable Afenyo-Markin, I think, the memo was one that was framed in the spirit of conciliation, in the spirit of trying to bring the House together, in the spirit of maybe cooperating with the Right Honourable Speaker. But I would have thought that maybe this would have come much earlier at the beginning of the crisis, because some of us at the beginning of the crisis said, look, you can't use legal tools to resolve what looks like maybe a political problem that could be solved by the two sides, including the Speaker, sitting down and okay. Albeit, I think nobody paid attention to that. And so this is where we are. And I can tell you, even when Parliament is recalled, I believe Honorable Afenyo-Markin and his colleagues, I am sure they are going to comb and scrutinize every little thing on the floor of the House, from a legal point of view. Even things that were allowed to pass in the past now are going to be subjected to some legal scrutiny at every step of the way. So the drama is not over yet. The few days that we are going to have after the elections will be days that we have to watch. Particularly also the outcome of the elections would also determine a lot of things. For instance, in the event that the NDC MPP is returned as the ruling party, we are going to see the NDC maybe bruised from the elections, and then also angry from what the Supreme Court did, and summing the two up would mean that they are not going to maybe cooperate with the other side. If the MPP doesn't get returned, that would also mean that most of what they are trying to do now likely would not be allowed to pass. Okay. Because the other side is going to say you can't commit a future government to maybe some of these things that we don't agree to.
Now, if you read Speaker's memo, he quotes, he says, and I quote, bearing in mind the provision of Article 296A and B of the Constitution 1992 and the closeness of your proposed date to the general elections, I am of the considered opinion that it would not be in the national interest to interrupt the campaigns of members and parties by a recall to plenary sitting of Parliament, unquote. Now, how do we determine national interest here? Is it the businesses to keep government running or the campaigning for someone to be in Parliament?
Well, I think, I believe it's a combination of both, particularly when you get to elections. You know, if this controversy didn't arise, I believe that by now Parliament would have been on recess to allow members to campaign. And as the Right Honourable Speaker said, at this time, MPs are coming to us to account for the mandate that we give them. And I think this opportunity is only provided once every 4 years. So that would mean that you weigh the two. I mean, government business is a continuum, but elections are only held every 4 years. So you weigh the two. I believe maybe that's what led the Right Honourable Speaker to that conclusion.
But and again, earlier we had parties, for example, the national chairman of the NDC had given, urged his MPs not to attend to Parliament if it is recalled. Now, just yesterday, we had the flag bearer of the NDC also say that MPs must not go to Parliament if it is recalled before election. I mean, can party executives issue directive to MPs not to attend to Parliament? And what does that mean, really?
No, I think that one I totally is one that I think it might be too much of an intrusion into the space of Parliament, because I think parties issuing directives directly to their members about how to conduct themselves is something that some of us have spoken against in the past. When NDC, we had a situation where many said the party chairman was in Parliament directing MPs in terms of what to do. And then when at another time the General Secretary of the MPP issued directives to their members, I think that we have to encourage the parties to desist from that, because it pits the parties, the MPs in Parliament against the people that they represent. Because at the end of the day, there is a balance that is needed. Party interest, national interest, individual interest, and so on. But we always say, in parliamentary research and practice, the weight of your kind of allegiance should be more to the citizens and to the Constitution, even if you pay attention to party interests and some president who is powerful and directing things. So all to say, I think it's in bad taste when we have parties, trying to direct, members of Parliament in terms of how to behave in the House after they have been elected.
Is it a foregone conclusion now, based on the Speaker's memo, that Parliament cannot be recalled until after the election? Is there anything the majority, the MPP caucus in the House can do?
No, there's nothing they can do, because time is not on their side. Because if they went through, you see, that is, if you read the memo, the leader of government business and majority leader went through a provision that did not mirror what they have used in the past. That is the provision where 10% or is it 15% have to sign
orders, 50%.
Petition.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. If he had gone through that, that would not have been reconciliatory. That would have been trying to force the hand of the Speaker. So he rather went on another provision, which is good because we need reconciliation and so on. And that provision is at the discretion of the Speaker. But if he had gone through the previous, there would have been time that is, needed within which the Speaker must act. And maybe that time, 1 week, 1.5 weeks, or 10 days, or whatever it is, they don't have that time now.
It could have been a total of 14 because it says the Standing Orders 53.1 says, despite any other provision, 15% of members of Parliament may request a meeting of Parliament and the Speaker shall, within 7 days after the receipt of the request, summon Parliament. 2. Parliament shall convene within 7 days after the issuance of the notice of sermon. So it could probably have still gone beyond the election.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I'm grateful to you, Doctor, for joining us here on
Thank
this.
you very much.
Let me bring in Roxanne Nelson Afenyo-Markin again. Roxanne, so what's your expectation of what will happen in Parliament after the elections when, like Speaker says, it is reconvened?
Now hello.
I'm here with you.
Yes, let me make the point that political parties have a role to play in terms of how they discipline their members that they sponsor to Parliament. When the caucuses walk out, for instance, on a certain business on the floor, when they walk out, when they turn their back on that business, they don't do so whimsically. They don't do so through moto. They do so in concert with the party hierarchy. So when my national chairman says, don't go to Parliament when there's a recall, technically speaking, he says I should go to Parliament, but I should walk out on the business that's on the floor. When my flag bearer says that don't go to Parliament, focus on your seat and retain it, technically speaking, he's telling me that when you go to Parliament, there's a business, walk out and go and do something else. So walking out on the business of the House is a normal practice that we engage in. So don't let anybody say that when national chairman says members of the NDC caucus don't go to Parliament, flag bearer says members of the NDC don't go to Parliament, it amounts to an intrusion. I disagree with that.
Okay, all right.
Second, my expectation is that the leader of government business will appreciate that it takes consensus to handle businesses on the floor and to conduct business in Parliament. Holding press conferences, haranguing speaker, calling him all sorts of names, insulting him from head to toe won't serve anybody's purpose. These are office holders, constitutional office holders.
Okay.
He wants to be treated with decorum, and so he must extend that to the speaker. You saw how speaker addressed him in this statement.
Yeah.
In response to his memo.
All right.
Decorous language.
Thank
That
you.
is what is expected of all of us.
Thank you, Roxanne. I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Roxanne Nelson Afenyo-Markin is MP for South Dai. This has been Top Story, brought to you always by Telecel, connecting energies and holy insecticide spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Up next is Newsnight.